The European Union says it is highly concerned by Iran's decision to ban IAEA inspectors from overseeing its nuclear sites in the country. On Saturday, the UN watchdog group said that Tehran had barred around a third of the International Atomic Energy Agency's most experienced inspectors from its nuke facilities. The Secretary General of the UN watchdog, Rafael Grossi, was quick to slam the move as unprecedented and said it would further complicate inspection of Iran's nuclear program. The EU has now jumped onto the condemnation bandwagon and is urging Iran to reconsider its decision without delay. The 27-member bloc holds that the withdrawal of inspectors is particularly worrying as it limits the agency's ability to conduct its verification activities, which includes the monitoring of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or the JCPOA, which partners of that plan have been trying to revive for some time without much progress and thus success. Well, let's cross now live to Tel Aviv, where I'm joined by Meir Javedanfar, an Iran lecturer at Reichman University. Good evening to you, Meir. I mean, just how effective even is the oversight of the UN watchdog? Even outside of the latest development, Israeli officials, most recently Benjamin Netanyahu, have been saying that Iran is violating every single one of its nuclear commitments.
Well, one of the reasons why Iran is violating its commitments is because Mr. Netanyahu encouraged President Trump to violate his commitments to the JCPOA, and Mr. Trump, because of the advice by Netanyahu, and more importantly, because of domestic considerations, decided to leave the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, and everything's gone downhill. And of course, the Iranian regime is, Mr. Trump is responsible for this starting this crisis, but Mr. Ayatollah Khamenei is responsible for its deterioration. Mr. Biden wants to go back to the nuclear deal. Mr. Khamenei, who didn't want to take step-by-step approach to return to the Iran nuclear deal. I think this recent Iranian move, which is very worrying, is for two reasons. First of all, I think the Iranians are concerned that some of the sanctions against, some of the restrictions on Iran's missile program may not be lifted, even though they're part of the Iran nuclear deal. Nevertheless, they may not be lifted because of Iran's support for Russia and some of Iran's violations. So there's that concern. Another reason, in my opinion, is because this is what we're seeing, Iran's actions, which are very worrying. This is a byproduct of the Ukraine war, an indirect byproduct. Iran has turned into Russia's biggest supporter for this war. This has given Iran incredible leverage over Russia, and it feels that Russia is on its side because Russia needs Iran more than ever. And this has created a sense of immunity in Iran and has emboldened its regime to take such controversial and dangerous steps as the one we're seeing.
And as a result, do you believe that it's also emboldened perhaps the United States as well as the West to increase sanctions on Iran, knowing now that they are intertwined with Russia?
But there have been sanctions, they have imposed them. The question is what's next? What are we going to do? Because despite what Mr. Netanyahu says, the inspectors, they have been very, very useful for the international community and for the state of Israel. What the inspectors did at the sites in Iran saved the work of the Mossad and the CIA and MI6, namely in that they legally and without having to hide their identity and without endangering their lives, they used to walk into Iran's nuclear sites and check the level of enrichment, how much has been enriched, at what level. And the fact that the Iranians are doing this really increases tensions. Yes, we can impose more sanctions, but I don't know, to be honest with you, I'm worried. I don't know how many more sanctions we're going to put and we're going to impose. This really brings the scenario of war closer, as much as I don't want it and not many people want it. But on the other side, we can be optimistic and say, okay, maybe the Iranians are just using this as leverage. Maybe this is going to be temporary. And let's hope for this, because otherwise tensions are going to rise significantly because of what Iran is doing. Because on the one hand, Batia, they are enriching at 60% because 60% is for making a bomb. No, it's not for civilian purposes. On the other hand, they're kicking out the most experienced inspectors. When you put two and two together, you cannot but come up with four, which is that the Iranians are even more adamant to go down the nuclear weapons path, and that's something that Israel will not stand for, be it Netanyahu or someone else.
So we're seeing a fortune of criticism and condemnation, but what about a call to action? Is there actually something that can be done about it? Are Iran's actions technically illegal, and how can the nuclear watchdog get involved in this?
Well, to be honest with you, you need leverage, because what Mr. Trump did has weakened our hands. And what Mr. Netanyahu is doing to Israel's judiciary is also weakening our hands, because the pilots are exercising their democratic right not to continue their reserve duties. I'm referring to reserve pilots, of course. When you put these two together, the Iranians feel emboldened. So this is a very, very tricky situation, to be honest with you. As I mentioned earlier, the Iranians are emboldened by their relationship with Russia and their informal alliance. But what's happening in Israel? Mr. Netanyahu, the consequences of Mr. Netanyahu's judicial reform are a dream come true for Ayatollah Khamenei. And he sees this as an opportunity to challenge the international community, including Israel, because Israel, which has always played the role of the possible attacker, of the possible implementer of the military solution, is now seen as weak. And this is one of the consequences, and these are difficult times.
And speaking of opportunities, there's no doubt that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is leaving for the United States for the United Nations General Assembly in just a couple of minutes, will no doubt be bringing this up with his counterpart in the US over Iran's enrichment. Meir Javedanfar, Iran lecturer at Reichman University, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Matthew.